Hello, welcome back to the video. In today's video, I'm going to go over all of the items that were limited in the last month, as I haven't been updating them as they have gone limited since I was on a break. But now I'll be going over all the ones I missed in this video and talking over them and how they might do in the future. Since it has been actually a few weeks since some of them have gone limited, they are probably at a more stable price now than they were when they originally were limited. And since Roblox did remove this recently updated feature that shows all the limiteds, I will be using Rollamons right over here to look at all the new limiteds. So over here we last left off on these 3 items getting limited at the bottom, and we did have some sponsored Forever 21 items or whatever there as well. And it seems like this month in December they had a really good track record of keeping with theme, and a lot of the items were actually winter themed, so it was pretty nice to see that happen as Halloween and October. They didn't really have that much actual Halloween items going limited during that month, and it was kind of random, but they stuck to the winter theme pretty well December, so we actually got a lot more themed items this month. So over here, the first one, Fuzzy Snowman Hat. This one's actually pretty interesting. It's basically just a regular fuzzy hat for winter with a little snowman on the front, so that's pretty cute. But over here is around 1,000 owners, so definitely not that much, honestly, and it already sold for around 10,000, so it's definitely going to be around that price in the future. It doesn't have that many sellers, so definitely going to be one of the more rare kind of items to get in the future. Next, Knights of the Splinter Sky Mind Smasher. This is actually a pretty cool one. We haven't really seen more of these core blocks and those kind of clan items too much, so it's pretty cool to see one of them go limited. But over here, this one has a pretty low amount of owners, actually less owners than this fuzzy snowman hat, but it seems to be doing around half of that, so it seems like it was a more recent item and more of the owners are actually active. But it's definitely a pretty cool looking helmet, so definitely if you got it originally, this is definitely gonna be a pretty big profit for you. Next up over here, Candy King Cap. This one's also a pretty cool one. It has more owners than the others at around 50,000, so definitely a lot more active people that are going to be trading this, which is why it's doing a bit less than 1,000. It still looks pretty cool, and since it is a bit of an older item, it's not going to stay at this low price forever, and after a few steals it actually does go up quite a bit, so have a pretty cool choice for to make limited. Next up over here, Hanukkah Scarf. This is actually a pretty cool one, and we're going to see soon that they actually did end up making every Hanukkah off sale item limited, so that's pretty cool. They finished off this holiday, so now all the Hanukkah items that were unavailable are actually now available as limited, so that's also pretty cool. Unfortunately though, since it is a scarf and it was actually pretty affordable back then, had around 10,000 owners, it's not going to do that great. It's around 500, but it's definitely a pretty nice cheap option for a scarf if you do want to get some nice one for the winter holiday. Next up over here, Pirate Elf. There are actually quite a few of these elf hats that are off sale. This was an older series that a majority of them were off sale, but they decided to make a lot of them limited now, so definitely a pretty cool kind of revival of this series. This is kind of a second version of those Santa limiteds, which there are quite a few versions of, but these are the elves, and this actually has 5,000 owners, which isn't that bad, but it's an older item, so it's going to do pretty well. So definitely if you own this one, this is definitely a pretty cool choice to go limited. Next up over here, Spring into Christmas. I think it's also a pretty cool one. It's this kind of tree for Christmas time, but it's shaped like a spring, so definitely a pretty nice one over there. Has a high amount of owners, which is why it's not doing that great, but I think it's definitely going to do well over time. So definitely if you got this one originally, it's definitely not a bad choice over here. Next up, Santa earmuffs. It's definitely an older item. You can tell by how it looks. It looks quite like an older item. It has around 8,000 owners, which isn't that bad either, and it jumps up quite a bit as well. So definitely not a bad choice over here if you owned this one before. Now you can make a nice little profit on this one. Holiday split shades right over here. This is also one of the more recent items. It has around 10,000 owners once again, and it jumps up quite slowly since it does have a lot more active owners, but it's definitely a pretty cool one. It is a shutter shades kind of item, and it looks nice for the winter holiday, so if you own this one, it's definitely going to be a nice profit for you. Next up right over here, we do have this adorable holiday mouse. This is actually a pretty interesting one. It is quite an older item, and it actually sold for quite high when it first went limited, but now it has dropped down to around 6,000. Has around 2,000 owners originally, so definitely going to be one of the more rare ones in the future, so if you own this one originally, this is definitely going to be a pretty big profit for you. Next up, Hanukkah Beanie. This was another Hanukkah item that they was off sale, and they just made limited. Not doing that great since it has over 140,000 owners, so definitely going to be one of the more cheaper limiteds for a very long time, but still looks pretty cool. It's a nice looking beanie for the winter holiday, so yeah, if you got this one originally, this is definitely not bad for a limited. Next up, Tree Master. This is kind of a witch or wizard hat with the top part being a Christmas tree, so very interesting style right over here. A very unique take on a wizard hat as well. This is actually one of the more expensive ones we've gone over so far, and it only has 5 sellers, so it's definitely quite an old item. Has around 800 owners, so it's definitely going to do really well in the future. So if you own this one originally, I think it's definitely a great choice to have gone limited. Next up right over here, Festive Cone. This is definitely one people have been wanting to go limited for a long time, and now it is actually a limited item. It is a part of the Traffic Cone series, which is a very popular series of these kind of cone hats, and this one is made for the festive season, so it matches that scheme right over here. It definitely looks pretty cool. It has around 6,000 owners, which isn't that bad, and it's going to do around 4,000, 5,000 in the future, so definitely if you own this one originally, this is definitely going to be a pretty big profit for you. Next up over here, this is Homemade Christmas Beanie. This is actually the most expensive one we've seen so far at the ones we went over, and it looks pretty interesting. You can tell it's quite an old item once again. It has less than 1,000 owners, and it doesn't have that many sellers either, so definitely going to do well in the future. The average price is a bit lower than it's actually selling for, but it is not like it's gonna sell, so it's gonna stay at this high price for a while. So definitely not bad over here, and definitely pretty cool choice to go limited. Next up over here, we did actually see the Black Friday items go limited after a couple of weeks after staying off sale, and as expected, most of them didn't actually do that great since they were popular items that were brought back for a long time. So the majority of them actually are not profitable, but there are some that are profitable, and originally they all weren't profitable, but over time it seems like they have done a bit better depending on the demand, and this is actually one of them. Blue top hat right over here, selling for almost 10,000, so it's definitely a profit if you got it originally for 5,000, so definitely not that bad. It's going to be a high demand item in the future, so definitely a pretty cool choice over here to bring back and make limited. Next up, Summer Bowler. This was 250 originally, so originally it did actually sell a bit lower than the starting price, but I think it's doing better a bit now, and after a few steals it'll definitely go up quite a bit, so definitely not that bad and a pretty cool choice to make limited. Next up, Blue 8-bit Antlers. I don't actually think you can profit on this one even after a few days, so pretty unfortunate, but over time I'm sure you will be able to profit eventually. Still, it's a pretty nice antler choice to just have, so definitely not that bad over here. Next over here, Orange Peel Fedora. Since it was 100 Robux, it's not gonna do great now, but it is profitable. 100 Robux, anything is gonna be profitable, so still, even though it might not be the best profit, it is still profit if you did get it for 100. Next up right here, Gold Rose headphones. This is actually the only one that is still selling under their starting price. It was actually the opposite of the others, where it started off profitable, but then over time it dropped down under the starting price, so pretty unfortunate there. I think it's definitely a nice looking pair of headphones, but bringing it back did end up killing it a bit since it did only have 600 owners originally, so pretty unfortunate there. So if they do decide to do any of these kind of waves in the future where they bring back items, I'm hoping they don't do rare items in the future. Next up, Ginger Advisor. This one was also a sale item. It was only 2 Robux, I'm pretty sure, so it was very affordable. Has around 30,000 owners, so not the rarest item, but I think it definitely looks pretty nice, and it's 500 Robux, so you definitely got a profit if you got this one originally, so definitely a pretty cool choice over here if you did get this one. Next up, this is Christmas Tree. This is actually a very iconic item. It's used in a lot of different games, so you've probably seen it around quite a bit. It is a hat, so it's on the head, so definitely pretty cool one right there. Has a lot of owners, 40,000 basically, and after a while it does actually go up quite a bit, so definitely going to be a pretty nice item if you did get this one originally. Next up, Festive Bucket. Kind of similar to the Festive Cone. This is the one that people have been wanting to go limited for a long time. It is a part of the Bucket series, which is a popular series of bucket hats, and this is the one for the festive season. I think it was 1,000 Robux originally, so you can still profit on this one even though it has quite a lot of owners, and this is definitely going to be one that has a high demand in the future, so definitely not that bad right over here. Next up right over here, Hanukkah Fedora. This one was the last off-sale Hanukkah item at this point right over here, so pretty cool one. It is just a blue fedora with a little dreidel on the side, so definitely a pretty nice one. It is going to do pretty well. It is a fedora, and fedoras do well over time. It doesn't have that many owners, so definitely if you own this one originally, this is definitely going to be a pretty big profit for you. Next up right over here, Sparkle Time Santa Hat. These Sparkle items do pretty well despite having a lot of owners, so this one is also going to follow that pattern of doing pretty well. Definitely looks pretty nice, and definitely a nice looking Santa hat if you did own it originally. It's going to do probably over 10,000 in the future, so definitely pretty big profit if you did get this one originally. Next up over here, Christmas tie. This one I think is a pretty creative way to make a tie. They made it shaped like a Christmas tree and decorated it like one, so definitely pretty cool one over there. It is a bit of an older item, so it's going to do well regardless of the sale count. Has a lot of owners too, so definitely pretty cool one if you got this one originally. It's going to do well. Next up, this is definitely one that people have been waiting to go limited and now actually win limited. Festive Domino Crown. It was I think around 10,000 originally, so you're definitely able to make a profit, and it's also going to be a pretty high demand item in the future, so definitely pretty cool one over there. Has a little bit less than 1,000 owners, so definitely not that bad, and after a few sales it already goes up by a couple thousand, so definitely not that bad. Next up right here, Jolly Elf. This is another one of those high owner count items, but it looks pretty simple, works well with a lot of different outfits, so definitely not that bad over here. And it seems like after a few sales already goes up quite a lot, so definitely gonna be one that I think people will be excited for in the future. Next up over here, another highly anticipated off-sale winter item, Santa Tentacles. This is a part of the Tentacles series, which is a series of these kind of squid hats in different colors. This one is red with this little Santa hat. Definitely looks pretty cool, has around 500 owners, and it's gonna do pretty well over time. Doesn't have that many sellers right over here, so if you got this one originally, you can actually make a nice profit on this one. Next up over here, Christmas Fedora. Kind of similar case to the Hanukkah Fedora. It is a fedora, so it's just gonna do well because of that. It looks pretty cool. It's a nice looking red color, and it has nice little leaves on the side. It has around 5,000 owners, so if you got this one originally, it's definitely gonna do well in the future. Next up over here, we have Big Head Santa. This is actually a pretty cool one. It is a part of the Big Head series, which is a series of hats that fit for the big head. So if you don't have the big head, this might look a bit weird without it, but I think it's still a pretty nice one. Has a decent amount of owners, and it's going to do alright, but it's not going to do that great in the future if you don't really have the big head item to fit with it. Next up over here, this actually I think is the first rare item of the month. The Cold Like a Snowman has less than 100 owners, so very rare item. It actually ended up selling first for 1 Robux, which is why the average price is only 13,000, so one of the original owners just decided to sell it really cheaply, but I think it's definitely a nice looking chain right over here. It's also a pretty unique addition to the gold Leica series because the chain is actually this light blue instead of the gold color. So definitely pretty cool. It's going to do well over time because of the looks, so not a bad choice over here. Next up, Snowflake Necklace is another kind of one of those older rare items, only 700 owners, and it's selling for 20,000, so definitely pretty cool over here. It looks like a nice necklace, so if you own this one originally, this is definitely going to be a pretty big profit for you. Next up, cool Santa. It is a Santa hat with a beard and also some nice sleek shades, so definitely very complete look right over there. It has around 2,000 owners, so definitely not that bad, and it's going to do around 5,000 Robux, so definitely going to be a nice profit for you if you did get this one originally. Next, the tiny elf hat. This one is an older item, so even though it has a bit more owners than some of the other items, since it is older, it doesn't have as many active traders, so it's going to sell for quite high. It definitely looks pretty cool, and it's a very nice looking take on an elf hat. Next up over here, Wicked Santa. This is actually a pretty cool one as well. It's a Santa hat, but instead it looks like this kind of punk look to it, so very interesting right over there. It's also one of the more expensive ones we've seen because it is also a pretty rare one at 500 owners. Doesn't have that many sellers and already sold for quite high a couple of times, so definitely going to be a pretty expensive one in the future. Next up, Snowflake Styles. This one actually has a lot of owners, but I think it's selling well because of its looks. People like this kind of cap style. It works well with a lot of different items and also a lot of different clothing, so people like it because of that. So it's definitely one that I can see have a good demand in the future, and it's definitely going to do well price-wise as well. It's definitely not that bad if you own this one usually. And the most recent one so far, we have Teacup. So it seems like they might be slowing down on the winter theme, and they're also slowing down on the limiteds because most of December actually had, I think, 2 or more limiteds a day, but it seems like for January so far, they've been doing 1 a day. So January might be a bit of a slower month for limiteds, but I think it's still fine. It's definitely a very, very cool item. We don't actually see many unique things like this, and it's just a fun take on a cup with little marshmallows, and it has a Roblox face on it. It's going to do well. It's kind of one of those unique and quirky items that people seem to like, so definitely not that bad. It has a low owner count, and it's going to sell for quite high, so definitely not a bad way to end off this video. So yeah, those were all the limiteds I ended up missing for the last month or so. I think it's definitely a good mix of limiteds, and I'm definitely excited to see what else they decide to make limited in the future. But yeah, I will be back to making these daily limited videos whenever they do happen, so keep an eye out for those whenever they do release. But yeah, that is much video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.